Eau Rouge, Radion, Kemmel, Pouin, Blanchimont. These are the names that strike fear into any driver's heart. Anyone who grows up with the sound of engines filling their living room on a Sunday morning dreams to test their mettle on these mythical strips of track. However, this infamy doesn't manifest out of thin air. The mythos around Spa exists because there's no such thing as a minor accident around this circuit. A crash at Eau Rouge, Radion or Blanchimont means you're going to be sending it into the wall at more or less the fastest your car can go. Pouin, while not quite flat out, but you're going to be going in the upper end of 220 kilometers an hour, depending on what you're driving. And if you have an accident on Kemmel, it's usually with someone else, and it becomes an airplane crash rather than a car crash. So the question has to be asked, would we go racing at this death trap? Well, the answer is simple. Racing drivers are insane. Testing yourself in the most extreme environments and the most extreme machines is their bread and butter. And as racing fans, that's what we want to see. The best drivers doing their business around tracks that punish the smallest of errors with the highest of consequences. We must ask, is the punishment that Spa offers too severe? To answer that question, we have to explore the history of this great circuit. To add some context, Spa in 2021 is nowhere close to the same track that it was in the 20s and 30s when Grand Prix racing first visited. Today, it remains one of the longest tracks on the current F1 calendar at a shade over 7 kilometers. However, that's still under half of the original 14.9 kilometer configuration that remained in use by F1 until 1969 and 1979 by other categories. This configuration snaked through the Ardennes forest and the Belgian towns of Francorchamps, Stavelot and Malmedy. By now, when I say went through the towns of, you're probably imagining some nice wide roads for racing, but no, not even close. Keep in mind, these are largely pre-war roads in the back arse of the Belgian mountains. Think more Steve McQueen in The Great Escape, rather than any sort of modern road, and you'll be on the right track. If you had an accident here, you either hit a tree and exploded, hit someone's house and exploded, or rolled over into a ditch and became doused in petrol, and then exploded. Spa was always a terrifyingly quick track. Enormous straights combined with long sweeping corners contributed to average lap speeds of over 260 kilometers an hour. In the 1950s, this ramped up further in the 1960s with the revolutionary mid-engine design of the Cooper and Lotus cars in Formula 1. The mid-engine layout meant that the cars were much lighter, much lower, and much more nimble, and this meant they were much faster than their front-engine predecessors. At a track already famous for killing drivers with chilling regularity, bringing a much faster car that didn't require crash testing, fire resistance, seatbelts, or a roll bar, or really any sort of safety features at all, was a recipe for disaster. Sadly, this proved to be the case during the 1960 Formula 1 weekend, the first season where mid-engine cars competed in the post-1950s Grand Prix racing. Sir Stirling Moss, regarded as the best driver in the world at that time, had a biblical accident in practice when a wheel broke off his privately entered Lotus, causing him to hit a trackside embankment and be thrown from his car and left unconscious in the middle of the track. Moss broke both of his legs, 3 vertebrae and several ribs, but miraculously survived, but was out of action for the rest of the 1960 season. Another accident involving a Lotus would end the career of Mike Taylor, who suffered steering failure near Stavelot, with a severely bent and buckled chassis trapping Taylor in the car, who had severe head, chest and neck injuries. Race day would really hammer home the danger of these new high speeds on a track that is really not fit for purpose, with 2 deaths, the first of which being Chris Bristow, a 22-year-old Englishman who was debuting at Spa driving a Cooper, another mid-engine entrant. During his battle for 6th with Belgian Willy Maures, the pair touched wheels at Malmedy, sending Bristow's Cooper into a series of rolls, throwing Bristow from the wreckage into a barbed wire fence in place to prevent livestock theft from a nearby farm, which decapitated him. His headless body was thrown onto the track, where it remained for at least 30 minutes before it was removed. Alan Stacey, driving yet another Lotus, was also killed in a freak accident. A bird struck him 5 laps after the Bristow accident, which knocked him out behind the wheel, and his car launched over an embankment and exploded after landing in a field 25 feet below the racetrack. It was said that the magnesium body and the lightweight tube chassis contributed to the explosion, killing Stacey. However, the autopsy stated he had suffered a broken neck from the bird strike, so blaming the Lotus for the crash was nothing but conjecture, but it is an element worth discussing. To further the problem, marshalling didn't exist as we know it today, so if you had a really serious accident, your best bet was that you crashed near someone's house so they could help you, or hope you were on good terms with the next driver that passed you by, so they'd stop and pull you out of your speedy tinfoil bomb. That isn't a joke, by the way. Safety features beyond hay bales were not present at Spa. Even after the F1 boycott mentioned earlier in 1969, it was truly disgusting how little was done to change the safety at Spa. This was highlighted by an incident during the 1972 24-hour touring car race. Hans Stuck said to Jochen Mass during a driver change pit stop, "Watch out for body parts of the Master King." Mass arrived on his outlap expecting to see car parts littering the track, but no, it was the remains of one of the very few fire marshals stationed around the track who'd been hit attending a previous accident. This laissez-faire attitude towards safety changed during the mid-1960s, spearheaded by Sir Jackie Stewart after his near-fatal accident at Master Kink in 1966. Master Kink was a crucial part of the old layout. It was an extremely high-speed chicane, flanked by two huge straights. It required precision, bravery, and immense car control where even the slightest mistake cost you a vast amount of lap time, or at worst, just straight up kill you. 1966 was the first season where engine capacity was increased from 1.5 litres to 3 litres, so Spa was already earmarked as a red flag in the minds of many of the drivers, which was only elevated to an absolute black hole of fear when the circus arrived and it was lashing down with rain for the entire weekend. Stewart went off at Master King during the race where he smashed through a woodcutter's hut, hit a telegraph pole and rolled down onto a lower part of the circuit. The BRM that he'd been driving had bent itself over Stewart's legs during the accident, so it trapped him in the car upside down, being soaked in fuel. It was 30 minutes before Graham Hill and Bob Bondurant made it to the crash site and were able to borrow some tools from a local to free Jackie. To make things worse, there was no emergency medical help or even a doctor on site at the track, as there never was in those days. Quick thinking locals, along with Hill and Bondurant, decided to place him on the back of a flatbed truck until an ambulance arrived at the scene. This ambulance then took Stewart to what was called a medical triage centre while waiting for a better equipped ambulance with the ability to treat him. Stewart said of the triage centre that the floor was covered in cigarette butts and other rubbish and was not fit for any sort of medical emergency. When he was eventually picked up by the ambulance with the ability to treat him on the way to the hospital, this then got lost, leaving Francorchamps with the Great Scotsman in the back. After this accident, Stewart decided that enough was enough and he began to become an outspoken advocate for driver safety in motorsport, something which had never happened in such a direct manner before. His work and influence changed the course of Formula 1 for the better, saving countless lives by demanding, in the beginning, the basics of safety standards and leading to the almost peerless medical facilities and first responders globally today. Even though Spa has had the most obvious total overhaul of all of the modern F1 circuits, the question remains, is Spa too dangerous to have on the calendar if the FIA doesn't mandate some changes today? I'm not saying that we should be having the 1994 solution of sticking a horrible chicane after Eau Rouge, but with the deaths of Antoine Hubert in 2019 and the increasing frequency of cars being launched back onto the racing line after an accident at Radion, surely something needs to be looked at concerning the barriers at the top of the hill. The reason Spa has a reputation for being one of the greatest racetracks in the world is due to its sordid and often disturbing history, but also because of the great feats of driving we've seen take place there over the years. Ayrton Senna's run of 4 straight wins between 1988 and 1991, the pick of which being his peerless drive in 88, which seen him beat his teammate Alain Prost, who you may have heard was no slouch, by a staggering 30 seconds. Michael Schumacher making his debut in 1991, the young German who'd never driven at Spa before, at all, in anything, learned the track on a bicycle when he got the call up after Bertrand Gachot decided to tear gas a taxi driver, and having never driven an F1 car before Tuesday of that week, managed to qualify his Jordan 191 over a second faster than his vastly experienced teammate Andrea de Cesaris. His actual race only lasted 500 metres before his clutch melted, but a star was born. Sticking with Schumacher, him and Hakkinen having one of the greatest battles in history during the 2000 Grand Prix, culminating in one of the most iconic overtakes of all time with the 3-wide dummy pass around Zonta on the Kemmel Straight. The famous Jordan 1-2 in 1998, which was totally on merit and not at all because a lap 1 crash wiped out over half the field. Kimi Räikkönen announcing himself to the world as an elite driver by going from 10th to 1st in 12 laps and going on to blitz the field to win his first Belgian Grand Prix. This small selection of countless moments over the years on the modern Spa are driving feats regarded as something truly special, because modern Spa still has the aura of danger surrounding it. While safety is not something that can ever be taken lightly or ever be an avenue that can allow complacency to fester in, we also have to acknowledge that racing cars are inherently dangerous. Going over 300 km an hour is not something humans were ever designed to do, and we're even worse if we go from that speed to a dead stop in no time flat. We can make Spa safer, history has proven that. It should be on the F1 calendar until the sport dies. It's that important to not only Formula 1, but car racing as a whole. If you made every track look like Paul Ricard, a featureless car park with motion sickness paint, motorsport will be dead within the decade. Tracks that adhere and live with nature is what makes motorsport this great pursuit we all love in the first place. We can make it safer, but safe doesn't exist in our sport, mate. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us with the mystical abyss that is the YouTube algorithm. Also hit the subscribe button as well. We'll be putting content out like this regularly, so make sure you don't miss it. Thanks for watching.